Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. Today we are broadcasting to you live from South Central Texas, aka Austin, and this is the Friday FARcast. I want to apologize for running a bit late today. I've been doing my best to get some pertinent content, putting things together for today's show, and some studying involved. Sometimes I get a bit distracted. I got hung up on a. It's like what's in front of my face. I got hung up on Sandy Hook, another Mercury Retrograde kind of trip, and also sort of deconstructing Alex Jones a bit. You know, I mean, he's here. He's in Austin, and I've been following Alex Jones for a very long time. I've been following him since the late '90s. So we're talking around 97, 98, 99. That's when I saw InfoWars start to pop. Prison Planet was really what he was doing at that time. That was his website, and I find Alex Jones fascinating for a lot of reasons. One of the things I find fascinating about him is I think in a weird way there's a similarity between the two of us on some things, and on other things the similarity kind of goes away. And I also think he's extremely bright, and I think that he gives people some interesting truths to chew on. And then he closes the gate to that, and he kind of moves them over to another area and puts them in a different kind of pen. And to that extent, he becomes a gatekeeper. And I do believe that's what he is. I think he's reconciled for the most part because I think in his mind he's giving people some good bits of information that are chewy and kind of make a difference theoretically in their life. And then he kind of goes off the res. And so I'll give you an example. I was watching the show from yesterday, today. And I was only watching for, I don't know, maybe about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. And he was talking about how he was on George Norrie's show up until like 3 in the morning or something like that. And I didn't hear the show, but one of my Facebook peeps told me that he basically recanted everything about Sandy Hook, which is kind of why the Sandy Hook thing got triggered for me this morning. And it's like there are videos out there where he's openly talking about Sandy Hook and how it's hoaxy, and so he's in this kind of state of denial. It's one of the things that he accuses liberals of backtracking or walking things back without having any kind of accountability. He does the same thing, and he does it with the Sandy Hook material. But that's not really what I was. Really tweaked my radar a bit today. Was he said that he was tired. So when you're tired, you make mistakes. Your thinking isn't as sharp, and I don't care how much brain boost supplements you take or how much choline coffee with MCT oil you drink. If you're tired, there's really a very good chance that you'll make a mistake. And he was spending a lot of time talking about the refugee crisis in Europe. And that is part of Jones's kind of magical formula. Because what he's talking about is real. Yes, is real. It's real. And he puts together some very interesting historical touch points. He talks about the war between the Spaniards and the Moors that lasted 300 years until the Spaniards finally kicked the Moors out. And And then he shows these boats, the Zodiac rubber boats washing ashore on the beaches of Spain where people are hanging out and relaxing and vacationing. And all of a sudden, you've got this blitz of quote-unquote refugees, and they're all young men. And I've talked about this before. They're not young women or babies. If they have them, it's like, and he points this out, it's usually a publicity stunt. So what he's basically sharing with people is the truth. He's sharing the fact that George Soros is funding the operation. The people that are picking the quote-unquote refugees up are making money. They're making money for making those trips. And the refugees that get sorted out, filtered, placed in these centers, these integration centers, which are laughable, they make money too. So there's money being made. It's basically a cottage industry, is what it is. And where are they getting the money? They're getting the money from places like the UN or UNESCO, which receives funds from all number of people, including Ted Turner, who's apparently donated $1 billion to the UN, although I'm sure the UN has blown through Uncle Ted's billions already, or billion already. So he's being upfront about it. He's being clear about it. But what he doesn't tell you about the crisis, he'll say it's manufactured, and he'll say it's globalist, but he'll never talk about Barbara Specter Lerner, whatever. I think it's Specter Lerner. And that famous piece of audio that I've played a number of times on this program, where she talks about Europe's days of being a monolithic culture are over, and that they're going to have to deal with diversity, whether they like it or not. And I am not putting words into her mouth. You can look this up. And she said, and the Jewish people will be at the forefront of this. And they may resent it, they being the Northern Europeans, but they're going to have to get used to it. So I'm not saying anything that's not already out there. Now, I'm also not saying that every single Jewish person in the world has rubber stamped that refugee crisis. No, that would be a complete disservice to a lot of really good people. Okay? Let's be clear on that. Let us be clear on that. But Barbara Lerner, Specter Lerner, she's speaking for a whole group of people. A whole group. And if I belong to that group, I wouldn't dig it. I don't like when somebody speaks out in turn for a group that I'm a part of and I haven't consented to it. So I'd be pissed. It's like, what are you talking about? No, I don't consent to that. You and your completely distorted and myopic vision have, but not me. But you'll never hear Alex Jones bring this up. You'll never hear him sort of tag her soundbite to any of this, because they were signaling this long before this refugee quote-unquote crisis started to happen. And again, I'll give Alex some credit. He talks about, and I've talked about this before, how the NGOs have gone into Africa and basically made a mess of the continent. And they invest in one petty tyrant after another, by arming the opposition. They keep the continent in a pretty basic state of chaos for the most part. Well, they go in and they plunder the resources, and the Chinese are just as accountable for it as well. The Chinese have probably actually surpassed the European and the American NGOs now, because China is deeply entrenched in Africa, removing all of those really precious metals and all the good stuff that you need for your cell phone. What's this? It's just a mic thing. Hold on. Yes. It's about time. The computer's slow today. Yes. But that's why these things have happened, for the most part, in Africa, because it's been destabilized for decades and decades and decades, and there's no real strong continuity, no real strong leadership. And the one guy who really looked like he could be a really significant leader, Steve Biko, of course, he met an untimely death. I guess he wasn't communist or socially Marxist enough. So we have this complete, disaster happening throughout Africa. And there's also the indoctrination that's been taking place over the last couple of years to get these people, young men. Now, it's not just, you remember that during, this is so funny, this kind of blows your mind, that when this crisis started, and I talked about this when I was back on Gaia. Yeah, I did a show on it, and it had to do with Neptune and Pisces and Chiron and Pisces. I did a follow-up on that about 3 or 4 months ago on the live stream. And I went through a detailed analysis. What I'll probably do is I'll put that up on the website today. I'll go find it, and I break down the photos. I break down the symbolism of the photos. Anyway, I talked about this on Gaia back in 2013. So we're talking 4 years ago. And at that point in time, the bulk of the quote-unquote refugees were coming from places like Iraq, Libya, northern Syria, Afghanistan, and some of them were blown out by the war, but some of them were not. And they were skillfully placed in this human exchange, so to speak. Well, those refugees are not showing up anymore. It's like that tap has been turned off. And now the people that are showing up are people from sub-Saharan Africa, which have nothing to do with the war in Syria. That ship has sailed, but it's not keeping them from saying, look, we got to bring people in here. We've got to continue to create chaos. We've got to continue to destabilize these cultures. And we have to continue to kind of wipe out this portion of history. And like I said, some people, like there's a guy who started to follow me on YouTube, and he basically said, well, hey, karma's a bitch. It's payback time. It's payback time for the Northern Europeans. Well, look, I didn't do anything, right? No, I didn't promulgate any kind of adversity or any kind of hardship on any group of people. I was born into this body, and I'm trying my best to get along like everybody else. And that's the bottom line. And I think it's really interesting because then we get into the whole idea of bloodline and genetics and race. And if you go far enough and deep enough, you'll find that we're comprised of a lot of different blood types and genomes, which represent in different racial manifestations. So even though a person may appear to be a certain skin tone, theoretically, you jump down into the library of their DNA, and guess what? It's not pure. And that's the way it is. And so if that's the case, then do we all share the karma? Do we all share the burden? of what's taking place. I think it's really important, in my estimation, to understand that we're all in this together. And I know that there are people that break this down and say, okay, if push comes to shove, and this group mobilizes, and this group mobilizes, and this group mobilizes, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Because it's going to be clearly defined by some form of group affiliation and association. I don't have an answer for that. I don't. Because in the world that I choose to live in, that's not the world that I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning a different kind of world. And so I think it gets back to this whole notion of grudge and people having some score to settle. And I think this is old school, Old Testament, Hammurabic thinking. We have to raise this thing to another level. If we're going to survive on this planet with a relative sense of cohesion, we've got to get to another level. And that doesn't mean that we blur all the boundaries and make everything acceptable. That's the paradox of the whole operation. That's not how it happens. But all of a sudden now, there's a new wave of these refugees, and it has nothing to do with the war. So where does that lie now? Because one of the key triggers during really what I'd call the first and second wave of the refugee crisis, starting in around 2013. How do we work with the energy? I mean, I think that's the bigger issue here. And how do we call these people out on manipulating and moving populations around solely for at least the initial factor of descent? I mean, there are also big economic factors involved. I mean, at what point does Italy or Spain, who are already probably bankrupt, go bankrupt for the second or third time because they can't deal with the influx of the people? So it's also an economic weapon. These are all questions that we need to answer, and at some point there has to be a kind of a no. We have to, and the EU is screwed because all those countries have signed off on this program. You can't say no. You because you're part of the EU and EU has said yes, it doesn't matter. You're kind of toast. So you have to swallow the pill. You have to swallow the blue pill again and again and again every single day. Ain't life grand? Anyway, this goes to I want to bring this back to Alex Jones, and again, tip my cap to his brilliance, because Alex is a brilliant guy. He's a brilliant guy. Anybody who can, with a clear conscience, bring 70% of interesting, relevant truth, talk about vaccinations, talk about AI, talk about the satanic systems, which are all quite real, right? And then sort of herd people into a pen and then begin to sort of level off on that process. And he's made peace inside of himself. You can tell because he can communicate this with rapid and fluid ease. Somebody who's not made peace inside of themselves cannot do that. They can't. Their delivery is marred. They have a challenge getting words out. There's no, it is probably the textbook version of cognitive dissonance, and he does not suffer from it, trust me. So he's made some kind of emotional, psychological, and even spiritual adjustment inside of himself in order to do what he does. And I know that there are people who have very different opinions on him. And my opinion is talented, gifted, brilliant gatekeeper who gives you about 70% of the meat and then 30% synthetic sheeple liver. That's what you get. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about, since we're in this kind of Mercury retrograde phase now, I wanted to talk about what's happening with Trump and this potential coup that we've been discussing. And I also want to talk about the fact that the coup may have already occurred, which some people have presciently brought up. But that's just one stage of it. There's another kind of deeper level here. And I think all those things are quite real in a lot of ways. I mean, I really feel like as we move towards the eclipse, and as the Comey findings begin to sort of pile up, there's going to be this dovetail on the event horizon, which I think is going to be right around the eclipse. Now, that said, there could be something else going on, and I'm going to try to highlight what the something else is. Before I do that, I want to play you a snippet, and this is from an audio book of Battlefield Earth, and I just grabbed it whole off of YouTube. So there's going to be an intro talking about the book and how great L. Ron Hubbard is, and there's going to be an outro. But I want you to listen to the bulk of this, and it's about leverage. And if you know anything about the book, Battlefield Earth, it's about the Cyclos who come to Earth. They're the super advanced race from another planet in another galaxy. And they're here on Earth to man gold, or mine gold. They use man eventually to mine the gold. But they're here to mine gold. They are plunderers, they are traders, they are pirates. And Cyclo is short for psychopath. Now, the rumor on the esoteric streets is that L. Ron Hubbard, in conjunction with Jack Parsons, over the course of their various Babylon workings, got the idea for Battlefield Earth, and ultimately, which became the fulcrum for Scientology, from one of their, or in part, their various Babylon working sessions together. It wasn't just one session that they did. They did, I think, about 4 or 5 with Marjorie Cameron, I believe, who was Jack Parsons' wife, and the Mistress of the Moonlit, which becomes the harlot, the woman in red, the whore of Babylon. Anyway, so the theory is that L. Ron Hubbard gets this whole download during these sessions. And kind of when they finally culminate these Babylon workings, Hubbard and Jack Parsons go their separate ways and really have no contact with each other again. And then Jack Parsons, of course, dies in a mysterious chemical fire at JPL. So one of the things that is a significant part of the Cyclos psychology and general operating system as a species is leverage. And they use leverage to their advantage to get people to do things. So I'm going to play you about a 5-minute excerpt, and this is has to do with Turl, who is having a confrontation with his pet human, his pet animal, Johnny Boy. And Johnny Boy will ultimately lead the rebellion against the Cyclos. So this is the definition of leverage and how it gets played out in L. Ron Hubbard's futuristic tale of a time when Earth is invaded by archonic-like species to mine the gold of planet Earth.
Battlefield Earth, the #1 best-selling audiobook from master storyteller L. Ron Hubbard. Battlefield Earth, a totally revolutionary, game-changing multicast production stretching the boundaries of audiobooks. Battlefield Earth, the ultimate in dynamic sci-fi storytelling, fully immersing you in a virtual movie in your mind.
Turl knew leverage when he saw it. This man thing had sensed that it had leverage. As a veteran security officer, he depended on leverage at every turn, and advantage, and blackmail, a method of forcing compliance. And now it was turned around. He sat there studying the man thing. Did it have any inkling of the plans? No, of course not. Possibly he had been too insistent day after day so that this thing sensed he wanted something of it. Possibly he had been too indulgent. He had gone to the trouble every day or two to go out and shoot rats for it. And earlier, hadn't he gotten it water? And look at all the cunning and difficulty of establishing what it ate. Here it stood, brave and strong, telling him it didn't eat that. Turl looked at it more closely. Well, not brave and strong. It looked pretty sickly, really. It had a worn robe around it, and yet it was almost blue with the coldness of the day. He glanced over at the pond. It was frozen over, dirt and all. He looked around further. The cage wasn't as dirty as it might have been. The thing evidently buried its jobs.
"Animal,"
said Turl.
"you had better get to work if you know what is good for you."
Bluster sometimes made it, even when one didn't have leverage.
"The winter weather,"
said Johnny in Cyclo,
"is bad for the machine. At night and in rain or snow, I keep it covered with a deer hide from my pack. But the dampness is not good for it. It is becoming tarnished."
Turl almost laughed. It was so funny to hear this animal actually speaking Cyclo. True, there was some accent. Probably Chinko. No, maybe not Chinko, since all the polite phrases, the forgive me's and pardon me's, Turl had heard when he checked the records, were not there. Turl had never met a Chinko since they were all dead, but he had met a lot of subject races on other planets, and they were carefully servile in their speech, as they should be.
"Animal, you may know the words, but you do not understand the proper attitude. Shall I demonstrate?"
Johnny could have been launched on a flight to the bars with one sweep of those huge paws. He drew himself up.
"My name is not Animal. It is Johnny Goodboy Tyler."
Turl absolutely gaped at him. The effrontery, the bald gall of this thing. He hit him. The collar almost broke Johnny's neck as the rope brought him up short. Turl stalked out of the cage and slammed the door. The ground shook like an earthquake as he stamped away. He had almost reached the outer door of the compound when he stopped. He stood there, thinking. Turl looked at the gray-white world, felt the cold glass of his face mask cutting his gaze. Blast this stinking planet. He turned around and walked back to the cage. He opened the door and went over to the man thing. He picked it up, wiped the blood off its neck with a handful of snow, and then put it standing in front of the table.
"My name is Turl. Now, what were we talking about?"
He knew leverage when he saw it. But never in their association thereafter did he ever address Johnny as anything other than Animal. A Cyclo, after all, could not ignore the fact that his was the dominant race. The greatest race in all universes. And this man thing. Ugh.
Battlefield Earth, the #1 best-selling novel, winner of the Saturn and Golden Scroll Awards in the United States, Italy's Tetradrama d'Oro Critics Award, and the Gutenberg Award in France, is now a fully immersive audiobook with HD sound. Experience the epic adventure that changed the shape of science fiction forever.
Okay, you get it. I don't want to give a full-blown commercial shout out to L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology per se, but that, dear friends, is the operating principle on this planet. It's leverage, and leverage, as L. Ron Hubbard, through the narrator of Battlefield Earth, quickly points out that it manifests itself in extortion and blackmail. And that's how you get people to do things. That's leverage. I mean, think about it as a parent, or when you were a kid, your parents exercised leverage over you. They were bigger, they were stronger. At some point, you began to close the gap. Maybe you thought you were as smart as they were. But they always found a way, generally, to have some form of leverage, taking something away from you, confining you to an area for an extended period of time so you couldn't experience your freedom. Those are all forms of leverage. And I'm not saying those things are wrong, to be honest with you. But we're indoctrinated into leverage from a very early age. Perhaps we just simply comply and recapitulate this ritual of leverage without even thinking about it. Because number one, it was done to us, and number two, we don't understand any other models. How do you create a sense of boundary and being able to say no without including leverage? And that's just at a parental level. So then what happens is that we're indoctrinated into leverage, and it becomes this operating principle. If you don't do this, you get this. If you don't do this, you don't get this. Or if you do this, which is another form of the leverage, you'll get this. Ultimately, it's a negative system of reward, is what it is. It's a negative system of reward. The best people, or the people that understand leverage the best, they won't even. Okay, there's two levels of this. The people that understand leverage the best don't make it apparent that they're using leverage. They may make very subtle undertones about the leverage that can be used in order to get somebody to do something, whether it's close a deal, sign a document, whatever that is. The best, the most insidious people when it comes to leverage are basically telling you that they're using leverage and that they become very transparent about it, and then they get you to basically do it anyway. The best example I've ever seen of this is in Glengarry Glen Ross, where Al Pacino goes for hardcore clothes with Jonathan, what's his name? I forget his last name. He was in Brazil, and he looks like the Pope. Jonathan, I forget his last name now. It'll come to me. In any case, what Al Pacino is doing is he's using leverage in that scene in a very, very sophisticated way. And the leverage is this guy's manhood. He's gonna leverage his lack of will and the decision making that he has ceded to his wife, and he's going to use that as leverage. And he's basically telling him during that scene that that's what he's doing. And it's brilliant. And this is where the most successful people who in the world, they tell you what they're going to do, and then you do it anyway. That's like high level manipulation. Right below that is the level where they're not telling you that they're doing it, but they're doing it anyway. Right? And then the most clumsy and awkward is when they slam the fist. Well, I've got this, and you're going to do this, and if you don't do this, that's really ham-fisted versions of leverage. But it's a system that we've been indoctrinated in and inculcated in, so that ultimately we wind up responding to some form of leverage, ultimately because that is the game that we played with our parents. We either got reward or love or some form of acceptance. Now, not everybody got indoctrinated into that kind of cycle. Some people actually had really, really, really good parenting. And the leverage was used at an absolute minimum. And then what happens is that we wind up creating a rebellious spirit around leverage. We want to break free from the chains of leverage. And unfortunately, most of us are unequipped to do that because of how pervasive it is in the world. So why am I talking about this today? Well, I'm talking about it today because I think that as they move through all of Donald Trump's material, as Robert Mueller and his cadre of investigators, I believe there's 20 of them, all the impaneled grand jury investigative bulldogs, all of whom have been involved with the Clinton family through donorship, and that's on the record for as many as we know of who is actually on or part of the grand jury. They're going to get dirt on Donald Trump. They went in and they seized all of Paul Manafort's records. Now, Paul Manafort is no dummy, okay? He's no dummy. And he knows that he's been under a microscope for months now. So I have no doubt that he's divested himself of as much material as possible that links him to Trump and whatever kind of money they were getting from Russia, whatever they were laundering from Russia. And it was going on. Everybody was doing it. Now, does that mean that he got everything? Probably not. So they'll get pieces from Manafort. They probably already have pieces on Manafort. Remember, the NSA has been spying on people intensely since the mid-90s, once they got the Promise software and the keyword recognition. That was the 90s. That was the mid-90s. They grabbed that through Danny Casolaro, and that Promise software, it's only improved over the years. So whether or not they actually have anything from Paul Manafort in terms of his records or his hard drives or anything they find in his place, I guarantee you most of these conversations that people have had, including Trump, they're all recorded by the NSA and have been for the last 30 years, intensely. And Trump may have been part of a wiretap program even before that. I mean, let's be clear about this, okay? Now, whether or not they can use that stuff is something completely different, because if they were wiretapping Trump back in the 90s, and there wasn't a warrant, a FISA warrant, which is what they call them now, if there wasn't that, then that evidence is inadmissible. But if it leads them to some other person or some other hard document or some other post-FISA wiretapping grant, then they can use it. Or it will be used to the degree that it can lead them to the next kind of cookie crumb on the trail. And then what happens? What happens when they have that kind of dirt and that kind of information? They have leverage. They have leverage. And at that point, when theoretically Trump can lose everything, not just the presidency now, not just the presidency. Think about this. he could be deposed or impeached if they find the right stuff or the right dirt, and they craft it and mold it in a way where some of it might actually stick to him. But they also could theoretically ruin him financially, because in this dog-eat-dog world, this is what happens. And even Trump knows that, or at least I hope he does. So now he would be threatened with not just losing his position as the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, which he no doubt probably really digs, but he could also lose whatever he has in terms of his fortune. What about the specter of him going to jail? I mean, I'm just speculating here. There are a lot of other players and layers involved, but I'm just getting down to raw, naked leverage. And so at that point, what would he be willing to do? Would he be willing to wage a full-scale war on North Korea, Iran, continue to go into Syria? At that point, he'll do anything that they, quote-unquote, want him to do. And that's it. End of story. The leverage will have been applied and it will have worked. Now, where else have we seen this? Where else have we seen this kind of leverage at work? I'll tell you where we saw it. We saw it during the Clinton administration. And what was the backdrop of the Clinton administration, and what was the leverage? It was the fact that Bill Clinton lied. He lied under testimony about having sex with Monica Lewinsky, which is absolutely ridiculous if you think about it. Because what happened was that Kenneth Starr had been employed to get into the Clintons' past in Arkansas. Whitewater, all the shady real estate deals. I mean, if they wanted to go down that dirty rabbit hole, they would have found so much that they could have nailed him to a cross for the next 30 lifetimes. Hillary too. Everything from the cocaine trade at Mina to having a really shady and corrupt coroner who, when they had these very strange deaths that would occur in Arkansas, the coroner just kind of waved his hand over it and made it all seem really run-of-the-mill and basic in terms of cause of death. I mean, it's dark, it's deep, and there's plenty there. There's embezzlement. There's all kinds of stuff, right? The Rose Law Firm, the handing out of contracts and loans that were preferred to people like Webster Hubbell's father, and all that stuff. It's all in there. What do they come up with? They come up with the fact that he lied about basically getting a blowjob from a young woman who was probably working for a foreign intelligence agency. Okay? So that's really, in some ways, I mean, that's like mice nuts, right? Compared to what and maybe they had that other stuff in the background ready to go. Maybe they showed him the file and say, look, here's what we're going to bring up. We're going to bring up Monica, but we know we've got all this other stuff on you. So you better play ball. So here's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to bring up a timeline to show you how events in history are interrelated and how leverage is used on a particular individual to engage in an act of willing and wanton war, aggression, and destruction on people that don't deserve it and shouldn't have any part of it. So here we go. This is from Frontline, which is a PBS. This is a PBS website. I'm not reading you anything from the right or the conspiracy world. But I'm going to give you a timeline here, and it's going to stretch from 1987 all the way up to roughly 2000. Okay. All right. So let's so bear with me here. It's going to take up maybe about the next 10 minutes of the show, but you'll see how the impeachment, the potential impeachment, or the impeachment of Bill Clinton, and the potential firing him as president is connected to an escalated act of aggression in the Balkans. Okay, here we go. So it's 1987. Slobodan Milosevic's power grows with a trip to Kosovo. At large public rallies, Serb nationalists embrace him when he dramatically promises to defend their interests in the province. This is all pre-fall of the wall. Slobodan Milosevic knows this is coming, by the way. Milosevic engineers changes in the Serbian constitution that vastly reduced the provincial autonomy Kosovo has enjoyed since 1974. Other measures put tens of thousands of Kosovar Albanians out of work and restrict the activities of their cultural organizations. Rioting and protests by Kosovo Albanians ensue. By the way, those Albanians wound up going to Italy. That was like one of the first wave of refugee immigrations. And it wasn't great, let's put it that way. War breaks out. This is in 1991. The bloody breakup of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, also known as FRY, begins as Slovenia and Croatia declare their independence. So once the wall goes down, all the Balkan states, pre-Soviet Union, mind you, I mean, they're going back. They're going back before World War II. They want to go back to their pre-World War I borders, okay? Or just after World War I. The bloody breakup of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia begins as Slovenia and Croatia declare their independence. After a secret vote, ethnic Albanians proclaim the creation of their own Republic of Kosovo, though it earns little international recognition. War breaks out in Bosnia after it too moves for independence. Several months after Europe, USA extends diplomatic recognition to the three major breakaway Yugoslav republics, but not Kosovo. In May, Kosovar Albanians elect literary scholar and pacifist Ibrahim Rugova president. In unofficial elections, Rugova begins creating a shadow government. December 1992, in a secret Christmas warning, U.S. President George Bush is still president at this point, informs Milosevic that Serbian aggression in Kosovo will bring unilateral U.S. military response. Now this is odd because they're not recognizing Kosovo, and yet they're saying, hey, Milosevic, keep your hands off it. Clinton administration reiterates this on several occasions through 1998. So we're in 1982 now. 1993, war in Bosnia continues as ethnic cleansing spreads. NATO threatens airstrikes to defend safe areas created to protect Muslims. In April, NATO carries out first airstrikes in its history against Bosnian Serbs. NATO, 1994. More NATO airstrikes, along with successful Croat Muslim ground offensive, bring Bosnian Serbs to the negotiating table. On 21 November, the Dayton Accord ends war in Bosnia. Milosevic emerges as the region's power broker, and NATO sees a lesson in its use of force. Kosovo issues, however, are left unresolved. This is 1995. The Kosovo Liberation Army, KLA, appears and begins sporadic attack against Serb authorities in Kosovo. Serbs ratchet up repression of student and ethnic movements in Kosovo, because that's where the ideas are promulgated and born out of, right? Madeleine Albright, remember her? Madeleine Albright, named first female U.S. Secretary of State as UN ambassador. Albright had argued in favor early of early military intervention in Bosnia. She's like Nikki Haley. They're the same person, basically. In October, violence escalates in Kosovo as Serbian security forces, this is 1997 now, forces clamp down further on resistance and KLA steps up its attacks. In 1998, January 13, renewed crisis in Iraq as President Saddam Hussein bans weapons team led by U.S. inspector. 1920, this is between January 19th and the 21st, 1998, first Monica Lewinsky scandal story appears in the press. Several days later, Clinton denies affair with Lewinsky, saying, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I never told anybody to lie." February 23rd, 1998, U.S. diplomat Robert Gelbart publicly calls KLA without question a terrorist group, a comment which some observers say Milosevic interprets as a green light to continue repression. Milosevic wants to keep control of the country. He doesn't want to be ousted in the early days of setting up his government. After KLA attacks on police, Serb security forces, 1 March 1998, Rugova's shadow government reportedly urges Kosovar Albanians to defend themselves against the Serbs. 5th through the 7th March 1998, after KLA attacks on police, Serb security forces massacre over 50 members of the Jashari family in the village of Prkaz. In following weeks, tens of thousands rally in Pristina to protest massacre. Serbs respond with counter-demonstrations. 7 March 1998, Madeleine Albright declares, "We are not going to stand by and watch the Serbian authorities do in Kosovo what they could no longer get away with doing in Bosnia." March 9th, 1998, contact group countries, US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, and Russia, meet in London to discuss Kosovo in a tense meeting. Gelbart meets with Milosevic in Belgrade. 23rd March 1998, Ibrahim Rugova re-elected as president of Kosovo with 99% of the votes in controversial elections boycotted by increasingly popular Kosovar Albanian hardliners. 31 March 1998, UN Security Council Resolution 1160 condemns Yugoslavia's excessive use of force, imposes economic sanctions, and bans arms sales to Serbia. April 1st, 1998, Judge Susan Weber Wright dismisses Paula Jones's lawsuit. 21 April 1998, Fry closes borders with Albania and Macedonia. 23rd April, in a national referendum, 95% Serbs reject foreign mediation to solve the Kosovo crisis. May 1998, Gelbart meets with KLA officials in Switzerland. Ambassador Christopher Hill named U.S. Special Envoy to Kosovo. Dayton Accord negotiator Richard Holbrooke, of course, from Brookings Institute. Holbrooke was theoretically one of the guys that dreamed up the Project for the New American Century, also known as PNAC, which became the skeletal structure for the event that changed everything, also known as 9/11. Holbrooke travels to Belgrade. Talks lead to first ever meeting between Rugova and Milosevic on May 15th, though dialogue quickly breaks down. 28 May 1998, Rugova and other Kosovar Albanian officials arrive in Washington to meet with Clinton, Gore, Albright, and advisors. In 29 May meeting in Oval Office, Rugova seeks Clinton's support for the Kosovar Albanians' cause. 31 May 1998, as many as 20 Kosovar Albanians killed in retaliation for death of a Serb policeman near Glogovac. June 1, 1998, Rugova meets UN Secretary General Kofi Annan in New York across UN-NATO intervention. 11 June 1998, at a NATO ministerial meeting, U.S. Secretary of Defense William Cohen urges NATO defense ministers to begin conceptual planning for potential intervention in Kosovo. Ministers decide to send a signal to Milosevic by conducting air exercises in the region. What will happen ultimately to Milosevic is he will fall under the first color revolution. And the group that will be essentially responsible for that is known as Otpor, OTPOR, an early-backed Soros color revolution group. Okay? All right. Let's continue. 12 June, foreign ministers of contact group plus Canada, Japan meet in London and level more economic sanctions. That's war on FRY. It's Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. 15 June, 1998, in the Balkan Air Show, 85 NATO warplanes fly over Albania and Macedonia. Okay. And show of force aimed at Milosevic. 16 June 1998, Milosevic and Yeltsin meet in Moscow, issue joint statement approving idea of diplomatic observers in Kosovo. 23rd, 24th of June, Holbrooke meets with, this is 1998, meets with Milosevic, travels to Kosovo to talk directly with KLA commanders. 6 July 1998, Kosovo diplomatic observer mission begins monitoring operations in the province. Early August 1998, Serbian forces intensify their summer offensive, attack KLA and Kosovo Albanian villages in Drenica region, driving thousands into the hills. August 5th, 1998, Iraq ceases cooperation with UN inspectors. Now we have the Iraqi backstory happening. This is all very important. 7th August, bombing of U.S. embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, apparently by operatives working for Osama bin Laden. 17 August 1998, after completing 4 hours of grand jury testimony, Clinton offers nationally televised admission of inappropriate relationship with Monica Lewinsky. Bang. Right there. That's it. That's the moment of leverage. August 17th, 1998. 20 August. Hello. Here we go. U.S. launches cruise missile attack on Afghanistan and Sudan in response to bin Laden's embassy bombings. In polls, significant numbers of Americans say they believe the attacks were staged to divert attention from the Lewinsky scandal. It's called leverage. 1-2 September at Clinton-Yeltsin summit in Moscow, Albright and Foreign Minister Ivanov together call for negotiations and an end to the Serb offensive. September 5th, 1998, Senator Bob Dole and Assistant Secretary of State John Shattuck travel to Kosovo and Belgrade. On the 9th of September 1998, Independent Counsel Starr dramatically delivers 36 boxes of impeachment information to Congress. Leverage. 9/9/1998, Serb police begin to pull bodies of Kosovar Albanians and Serbs from a canal near the village of Glajane. At least 34 bodies are eventually discovered, and suspicion falls on the KLA. 23rd of September 1998, UN Secretary Council approves resolution 1199 demanding ceasefire, Serb withdrawal, and refugee return, and calling for unspecified additional measures if Serbia refuses to comply. 24th September 1998, in Vilamora, Portugal, NATO defense ministers give NATO's supreme commander permission to issue an activation warning, the first real step in preparation for airstrikes. Remember, the United States is a member of NATO, so it's not like NATO is happening and doing this on their own. September 26, 1998, after more than a dozen Serb police are killed in fighting with the KLA, Serb security forces killed 35 villagers, including 21 members of a single family, in and around Gornje Obrinje. On the 30th of September 1998, at Principals Committee meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright pushes for airstrikes against Serbia. Administration briefs Capitol Hill on the plan, meeting congressional resistance. Congress says, hey, we're not sure we want to do this. This is like we're going to war. The administration notes it has no plans to send ground troops to Kosovo even as peacekeepers. October 5th, 1998, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan reports FRI violations of UNSCR 1199. And finally, October 5th, 1998, House Judiciary Committee votes on party lines to recommend Clinton impeachment inquiry. 12 October 1998, NATO approves an activation order authorizing preparations for a limited bombing campaign. 13th October 1998, after more than a week of negotiations, Holbrooke secures the October agreement. Agreement calls for Serbian compliance with UN Resolution 1199, ceasefire, troop withdrawals, elections, substantial autonomy for Kosovo, and other confidence-building measures. NATO temporarily suspends but does not rescind its accord to allow for Serbian compliance. Milosevic agrees to allow unarmed OSCE ceasefire monitors in the Kosovo verification mission into Kosovo. That's 16 of October 1998. 24th of October 1998, NATO Supreme Commander General Wesley Clark, a chairman of the NATO Military Committee, General Klaus Naumann, traveled to Belgrade, and Milosevic agrees to reduce FRI forces in Kosovo to pre-March 1998 levels. And on October 27th, 1998, in what appears to be vindication of NATO strategy, Serbia withdraws thousands of Serb security forces from Kosovo. Thousands of Kosovar Albanians begin to descend from the hills as winter threatens. And here we have the next ramp up, which is 31 October 1998. Iraq halts all cooperation with the U.S. Arms Inspection Team. November 1998, unarmed international KVM monitors under American Ambassador William Walker begin deploying in Kosovo. So now we've got the monitors. We're really soldiers, let's put it that way. And November 5th, 1998, U.S. Democrats make surprising gains in Congress. The Republicans maintain control. November 11th, 1998, UN staff evacuated from Baghdad as U.S. rushes aircraft carriers to the region and threatens strikes against Iraq. You see what's happening now? Once the impeachment kicks in here, Bill Clinton will do anything. Okay? Serbia warns Macedonia against following NATO to position troops on its territory. That's 13th of November, 1998. November 19th, 1998, Independent Counsel Kenneth Starr testifies before Congress for 12 hours. The following day, Judiciary Committee Chairman Henry Hyde issues new subpoenas and signals committee may widen probe of impeachable offenses, which is what's happening to Trump. December 1998, border clashes and skirmishes in Kosovo draw new U.S. condemnations. NATO approves and begins deploying in Macedonia. Okay. 17 December, U.S. and Britain begin 4 days of limited airstrikes against Iraq. So here we go. Here we go. We are now bombing Iraq. That is a declaration of war. Nowhere in this timeline do you see that coming up to Congress. And only Congress should grant war powers to a president. Clinton went off the res. He went off the res and started bombing Iraq. Why? 9/11 hadn't happened yet. See, this is why we're doing this exercise today. A little bit of Mercury Retrograde, take you back in time, and understand the process of leverage. At this point, he's willing to do anything. Anything. He'd probably bomb the American people at this point. December 1998, President Clinton impeached by House of Representatives. 27th December 1998, FRI security forces battled KLA and attacked villages near Podojevo. 14 January 1999, Senate trial phase of impeachment begins. 15 January 1999, a meeting of top of U.S. foreign policy advisors, the Principals Committee, Albright pushes for U.S. NATO military ultimatum, but is frustrated by colleagues' resistance. January 15th, 1999, the Rakak massacre in retaliation for KLA attack of 4 policemen. Serb security forces killed 45 Kosovo Albanians. KVM director William Walker arrives on scene the following day, forcefully blames Serbia in front of television cameras. Milosevic refuses to allow war crimes prosecutor Judge Louise Arbor to visit Rakak. Milosevic orders Walker out of the country, though he retracts the expulsion under international pressure on the 21st of January, 1999. In light of the Rakak massacre, National Security Advisor Sandy Berger reconvenes Principals Committee. Albright's push for military ultimatum wins the day. At the same time, NATO Sassur Wesley Clark and NATO Military Council Chairman General Klaus Naumann meet with Milosevic in Serbia. Intense 7-hour meeting. Milosevic claims Rakak was staged by the KLA, calls Clark a war criminal. I don't doubt that it was staged by the KLA. Knowing what we know about false flags now, what we didn't know then. Joint strategy on Kosovo by Albright and Russia's Ivanov. Clinton meets with foreign policy to discuss post-Rakak strategy in London. Contact group foreign ministers. This is on the 29th of January 1999. Issues ultimatum to Kosovo Albanians and Serbs, calling them to begin peace talks in France at Rambouillet on February 6th. 30 January, NATO renews its military threat, reapproves its act toward force, activation order, early February 1999. Senate trial of Clinton begins. So here we have a standing president who has been essentially impeached by Congress, is at the very best compromised, at the very best unable to act due to the fact that he has to summon a defense and place all of his energy in defending his position so he can retain his presidency. At worst, he's completely compromised. And when he's compromised, what is there? Leverage. Senate trial of Clinton continues. February 1st, Kosovo Albanians, 1999, announced they'll participate in talks in France. KLA agrees to participate the following day. February 6th, Rambouillet peace talks begin in France, though Milosevic refuses to attend. 11 February 1999, Clinton meets with foreign policy team to discuss NATO planning, U.S. costs, and KFOR exit strategy. 12 February 1999, impeachment effort fails. Clinton acquitted in Senate. 13 February, the day after his impeachment drama ends, Clinton calls congressional leaders to discuss Rambouillet, possible U.S. role, NATO-led Kosovo force. In radio address, Clinton notes his intention to send 4,000 U.S. peacekeepers to Kosovo after a ceasefire and a Serb withdrawal have been won. Madeleine Albright arrives in France for last days of talks, attempts to salvage negotiations. Albanian delegation continues to refuse to sign agreement. Amidst great Allied frustration, Rambouillet talks pause, allow Albanian delegation to return home for consultations. Clinton meets with congressional leaders to discuss Rambouillet, U.S. KFOR role. That's 23rd of February, 1999. March 8th, 1999, Senator Dole returns to Macedonia to lobby KLA to sign a Rambouillet agreement. 10 March 1999, Holbrooke and Hill meet with Milosevic to urge him to accept NATO settlement. 12 March 1999, KLA ready to sign a peace pact. However, Hill reports to Albright, Cohen, Berger, and Joint Chiefs Chairman Hugh Shelton that there was 0.0% chance of a deal on the Serb side. 14 March 1999, delegation led by Deputy Secretary Strobe Talbot travels to Europe capitals to confer on Kosovo. 15 March 1999, peace talks begin at Rambouillet, reconvene at Avenue Kléber Conference Center in Paris. 16 March 1999, CIA warns of imminent Serbian offensive. Fry asks Interpol to arrest KLA leader Hashim Thasi. 18 March 1999, in Paris, Kosovo Albanian delegates finally cave in and sign autonomy plans. Serbs refuse and begin winter live fire exercises in Kosovo the next day. 19 March 1999, in light of failure in peace talks, massing Serb troops at Kosovo's border, Clinton meets with foreign policy team to review NATO plans and strategy. 20 March 1999, Kosovo verification mission leaves Kosovo. Serbian forces quickly move in, begin a new offensive in the northeastern and north-central Kosovo. Western embassies begin withdrawing its dependence. non-essential staff from Belgrade. In a last-ditch effort to avoid airstrikes, Holbrooke is sent to Serbia to deliver a final ultimatum. Meeting fails to draw any concessions from an embittered Milosevic. March 24, 1999, the Kosovo Air War begins. There it is. There it is. Hold on. All right, I got to get back to this. Hold on. Okay, that's what we're looking for. That was the date. Okay. March 24, the Kosovo Air War begins. What sign is that under? It's under Aries, isn't it? It's the sign of war, obviously. Battle. Choosing their moments. Wisely and shrewdly. Not wisely. Consciously. Clinton rules out the use of ground troops to fight a war in Kosovo. Officials hope for a quick resolution in line with their experience in Bosnia. Prior to the Dayton Agreement, to signal Russia's displeasure, Prime Minister Primakov cancels trip to Washington mid-flight. So Russia doesn't like the fact that we're bombing the shit out of Kosovo. March 25th, 1999, Serbian forces reportedly killed more than 60 Kosovar Albanians near the village of Bela Krvik. Fry breaks off diplomatic relations with the United States, Germany, Great Britain, and France. Russian Duma condemns NATO attack. This is on the 27th of March. Postpones START 2 treaty vote. US F-117 stealth bomber is shot down, raising concerns about the vulnerability of even the U.S.'s most advanced aircraft. Kosovar Albanians are loaded on special refugee trains and sent to the border with Macedonia. Serbian television broadcasts images of 3 U.S. soldiers taken while on patrol in Macedonia, which means that, guess what, there's ground troops there. This is the 1st of April, 1991. So there's a covert war. Clinton and Hillary were staging a covert war in Kosovo. Ground troops, that part's covert. Bombing. You know what? You're supposed to declare war through Congress. It's a totally illegal war, and Clinton is, at this point, bombing Iraq, bombing Kosovo, and the backdrop of impeachment and all the documents that they have are kind of looming. And nobody's really making the connection between the two, that his hand in some ways is being forced. And Hillary, no doubt, is engaged in this at a level where she's quickly learning on the job. So this goes on, and there's huge amounts of, in April 10th of 99, NATO approves Allied Harbor the deployment of 8,000 men in Albania. NATO puts 8,000 troops in Albania. April 14th, Yeltsin gets involved. He takes a break from the vodka and gets involved. He sends a special envoy to the Balkans. 21st of April, NATO bombs Socialist Party headquarters in Belgrade. Attack destroys offices of several companies with ties to Milosevic's inner circle, including television operations run by Milosevic's daughter and wife. They did not like Milosevic. And it's not because Milosevic was some, evil perp. Let's be upfront with this. When people get moved around, morality has very little to do with it. It has to do with the fact that perhaps by removing Milosevic, they could probably bring somebody in who would be more amenable to slicing and dicing the considerable resources that were in that area for a long period of time and had been underproduced and undermined by the former Soviet Union. Whereas Milosevic might decide to say, hey, I got a country here, let me run this thing. Let me get it up to speed. I may be a prick and a son of a bitch, But you show me somebody who's running a country, and you're not going to see a Boy Scout. I'm sorry. There have been. You got to do things to get in charge and run a country. You've either got to be appointed or you've got to be totally ruthless. NATO's 50th anniversary on April 22nd, 1999. Celebrations begin in Washington. Though squabbling continues in the wings, allies maintain public unity and move for intensification of the air war. April 23rd, 1999, NATO attacks Serbian television in Belgrade, causing at least 10 deaths. So they're taking out the media. April 25th, 1999, with summit underway, Yeltsin phones Clinton to discuss Kosovo. Reopen contacts between Gore and Chernomidrin, who is, I guess, Gore's, equal on the Russian side. House of Representatives votes large along party lines to reject a resolution supporting air war, demonstrating mistrust of Clinton and his Balkans policy. NATO missile landers in Bulgaria. April 1999, in the Hague, Fried filed suit against NATO allies. April 30, 1999, NATO attacks on Belgrade continue, targeting Fry Defense Army headquarters. Chernomidin meets with Milosevic for 6 hours in Belgrade. Jesse Jackson arrives in Belgrade to discuss the release of 3 captured U.S. servicemen. He gets them back, 2nd of May, 1999. Milosevic reportedly gives Jackson a letter calling for a face-to-face meeting with Clinton. Late at night, NATO graphite bombs short-circuit electrical circuits in Serbia. The U.S. F-16 crashes in Serbia. We're at war here. You see this? We're at war. So this is amazing. Go back here. Congress, right? Congress basically votes this air war down, but all of a sudden, an F-16 crashes in Serbia. 3rd May 1999, Chernomidrin comes to Washington, meets with President Gore and advisors, endorses the idea of enlisting Finnish President Ahtisaari to assist with negotiations. NATO kills at least 17 in attack on civilian vehicles near Pek in Kosovo. Fry closes Montenegro's port of Bar, provoking fears of impending Serbian coup there. Bulgaria authorizes NATO to use its airspace for attacks. Remember, we're a member of NATO. It's not like it's independent of the United States. 5 May 1999, first NATO deaths occur when 2 U.S. soldiers are killed in non-combat Apache helicopter accident north of Tirana. Clinton is basically green lighting everything. Here we go. 18 May 1999, in reference to ground troops, Clinton notes that we will not take any option off the table. However, later that day, Clinton calls Tony Blair, reportedly angered by continued British public pressure for ground troops. In Helsinki, Ahtisaari and Chernomidrin meet Mr. Talbot, in the first of 4 negotiating sessions. 22nd of May, NATO mistakenly bombs a power month has shut down. June 3rd, 1999, Clinton reportedly on brink of decision regarding mobilization of ground troops in preparation for invasion. However, after mediators meet with Milosevic, the outline of a new Kosovo peace deal is announced. Clinton advisors and allies greet the news cautiously. So we were ready to send boots on the ground to Kosovo, June 3rd, 1999. And if it wasn't for Milosevic sort of wrapping his head around a new peace deal, that didn't happen. 7 June, NATO bombing continues as talks falter over details of Serbian withdrawal. 2 B-52 bombers, U.S., come to aid of embattled KLA fighters on Mount Pastrick, supposedly killing hundreds of Serbs. That figure is now disputed. And it goes on and on and on and on and on until, of course, we have the election with George W. Bush, in which case everything will be fast-tracked towards Iraq after the 9/11 incident. So I did this exercise to understand what was going on, number one, in the late 90s. This is a 2-year span, really. Well, we start off in we go all the way back to 87. But everything really ramps up between 96 and 99. It's a 3-year period. And intertwined with this rush for war, even though theoretically it's to come to the aid of Kosovo, we have the backdrop of the Clinton scandal, where he becomes a compromised president and will basically do anything at that point in time. And if it wasn't for Milosevic talking about signing a new accord in June of 99, there's a really good chance Clinton would put troops on the ground in Kosovo. Fast forward to now, here we are. We've got all these interesting little conflagrations. North Korea, Syria's on the back burner, Iran's kind of moving towards the front burner. They're trying to link all three as an axis of evil. And we have a lot of Sturm und Drang, a lot of bluster, a lot of bombastic, ballistic bluster. Meanwhile, the same kinds of investigations, the same kinds of dredging for more and more dirt, more and more evidence, more and more leverage takes place in the background. And when there's enough leverage on somebody, they will turn. I remember watching this Western not long ago. I think it was 3:10 to Yuma. And it was every man has their breaking point. Every man. That's right. And a woman too. And that is the ultimate application of leverage. Now, I did this in order for you and us together today to understand a certain principle, to see it as it was applied in a previous period in time, and how we can sort of understand and wrap our heads around what's happening currently. What you can do with this in your own life, because we try to find things that are at the very least meaningful and helpful, is try to understand where leverage is applied in your own life and how you consent to it, or how you yourself are a co-participant in an act of leverage. And see if there's something else, some other creative solution, some other way in which people can come to accord and not be manipulated or forced to do something through leverage. In some cases, you may have to resort to it. As a parent, sometimes it's the only thing that works. Trust me, I know that. But that's the challenge, to find another way. And that's our challenge in general. We've got to find another way. We find ourselves being tossed about on a tumultuous sea of what really appears to look like two major factions trying to gain control of the planet's resources, which is really our minds, our hearts and minds, number one, and everything else is secondary. And I would break it down basically between the neocons, which are closer to the social democrats, aka the fascists, and the neolibs, who are closer to the communists and the social Marxists. And these are the two contrarian forces or opposing forces that are going at it. And for most of us, we're witness to it. Unfortunately, a few of us were witness. A lot of us get pulled into the fray. We wind up taking sides. And this is one of the things that we have to understand and learn and try to educate ourselves with. All right. I think that's it. Wasn't that funny today, was I? I guess I don't know. I'm on a serious trip today. Well, we're 10 days away from the eclipse. The countdown is on. It is on. Like Donkey Kong. All right, have a great weekend. Have a really, in spite of what's happening out there, we always have to redefine our inner landscape. And it's tough, but it's important. And, find some activities that are meaningful, worthwhile, loving, creative. Creativity is a big one. All right, I'm out of here. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay up and know what's possible. I'm going to give you my new little bumper music here. And I'll be back on Sunday night with the astrological live stream. Here we go. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Friday FARcast.